Hello, I'm Chris. This is Reality Shadow Band. Tech Support's coming out Tuesday or Wednesday, they said, to close that portal. We'll see. It's been a cluster the whole time. Today we're going to do a watch along with it's auto reviews, talking about the American NAZI car connection. I had heard about this back about 30 years ago, and people would make whispers about it, and I was like, doesn't make any sense. This is crazy. That don't make sense. And after delving, going into a little bit, I was like, okay, this is still odd. This is still strange. And I've had it took me just recently, last maybe 5 years or so, to okay, this is actually, this really did happen. War is a racket. Things aren't as they seem.
War. What is it good for? War is good for business.
For sure. That was this is all about. So Smedley Butler, a very decorated Marine veteran, he's just he got into the top levels of this thing. He exposed it back in World War One, at the end of World War One. Hey, things aren't as they seem on the inside. And this has been such a sad thing to discover. This is the history of our country and these companies. And it's just amazing that they've gotten away with it, and there's been no reparations or anything. It's just, yep, that's what we did. We go into business. We make our stuff kill each other, and our people kill their people kill our people. And we'll just make $1 million and live in luxury for the rest of for the next 10 centuries. So, yeah, that's what we're doing.
War is a business. War puts things in a different perspective and also puts lots of people and companies in difficult positions, including the car industry. Many American car companies did business.
Okay, so that's Ford Lastwagen mit Generationstrieb. Okay, that's a Ford company vehicle made in the end Germany.
With German companies and vice versa, until someone higher up decided that these companies should not like each other anymore for whatever reason. But what happens when you play both sides of the fence? Welcome everyone to episode 60 of the Automotive History Series, which is a deep and rather serious investigation in the actions the American car companies took with their overseas operations during the Second World War. How did they handle their...
War is our business. People, the only way this keeps going is just people just don't know about it. I think if those people knew it in those factories, how this is being used against their own people, they'd be like, no, but who's going to stop them? You?
Conflicts of interest. Welcome to the American Nazi Car Connection. By the late 1920s, it became pretty clear which car companies would dominate the American car market. In fact, it were three companies: General Motors, Ford Motor Company, and the Chrysler Corporation.
I just want to point out that there's always three that dominate anything. And these guys, all own shares of each other. So was it really three?
The big three. Especially GM and Ford eventually realized that they could sell the cars worldwide and started to aggressively expand their business through different tactics. Ford tried to sell the very popular Model T and Model A worldwide. As you'll probably know, the Model T was a massive success. And by the 1930s, Ford would sell unique cars.
Totally cut the cost. Anybody couldn't even, if they're not doing the same process that Ford was doing on an assembly line. I mean, there were other people making cars, but they weren't doing the assembly line stuff, so they could never get the economies of scale.
Models better suited to the local tastes alongside its American models. Rivaling General Motors had a different approach. By the 1910s, the company set up a new division called the Export Company.
Wow, you guys are really clever with these names.
That took care of worldwide sales and acquired new markets. GM would sell their American brands and models all over the world, but did not try to adapt them to local tastes. Instead, GM would buy out local car companies that already had some name and fame.
Wow. So they just bought out, that's not monopolistic at all. You go buy out a local company and take over their operations.
And sell non-American models through...
It's the American way.
Through these companies. First, GM gained a foothold in the UK by acquiring Vauxhall in 1925. Opel in Germany was acquired by GM in 1929, and the Australian coach builder Holden was acquired in 1931. GM usually let these companies do their own thing, within reason, resulting in cars that suited the local market well, but with a bit of an American flair in its design.
Okay. Whatever.
Around the time both Ford and GM had set up shop in Europe, things started to change. a man with a distinct mustache started to make noises. Before the all-out war, we will get there, don't worry, there was already a lot going on in Germany in the years leading up to 1940, although many leaders, analysts, and newspapers around the world didn't think much of it. Hitler was a strong leader with some daring and vocal opinions once in a while, but then there were some other European leaders doing the exact same thing, so...
I mean, even the Americans were using it. So these guys are all using the new technology of radio to do mass propaganda operations on their population to get them whipped up, thinking that they're just going to be super patriotic or whatever, but it's just another scheme to consolidate power. Okay. So, and then they got the leveraging the radio to get notoriety and fame and use their voice to be heard. Because before that, it was just paper, right? So around this time, radio technology was cheap enough to be in the hands of many, many people, and then centrally controlled. And there was only one transmitter, and there wasn't like community transmitters or anything like that. It was all completely controlled, so it allowed them to consolidate power. And when the other thing they needed for this mass propaganda effort is mass mechanization, so they can be used to fight each other. And they get loans from the bankers, the international bankers, who of course stoke these beliefs. And some of these people actually do believe that they are gonna become some nationalistic thing and throw off the other anyone else in the world that may challenge their power. Okay, right.
Deal. You'd think this would immediately put American car companies like Ford and General Motors that own German branches of Ford and Opel in a tough position. But it was quite the opposite, in fact. Before the war, these companies had...
Look at how shady these guys look. It's just like, these are the characters who are built our whole society. No wonder it's so screwy.
Very good relationship with the ever-growing Nazi movement. This led to certain situations that are, in retrospect, rather unfortunate.
Unfortunate? No, I think it's more like criminal level. Like, hey, what are we actually doing here? What are we doing here?
Like Hitler, expressing his admiration for the American innovation and large-scale industrialization.
Right, because he liked large-scale propaganda. Well, of course he had large-scale industrialization. What are you going to do with all these people? You can't just have regular levels of production. You got to have industrial level. You're going to try and take over this whole thing, or at least put everybody out to the point where nobody can touch you. Okay, well, we'll see.
He admired Henry Ford and his ideas about cars for the people. He also agreed with Henry Ford's anti-Semitic expressions. According to the stories, he had a picture of Henry in his office. And then there was James.
Were anti-Semitic back then, and still are. So what? Okay, yeah, people hate people. Okay, why is this? I do. The thing that they make Mr. H there out to be this demon, but this is nothing new. It was like, why are we pointing out these particular people at this particular time when it's been this the whole time for everybody and pretty much everybody else? So okay.
James D. Mooney, vice president of General Motors and tasked with guiding its overseas operations. He traveled all over Europe to make deals and explore new markets. Through this role, he eventually met high-level Nazi officials in the mid-1930s, where they would talk about what General Motors and its Opel division could mean to Germany.
This guy was just pushing products. He's like, I just need to get some numbers up. Get these numbers up.
In terms of creating a people's car. It was there where he received the Order of Merit of the Eagle, the highest order a foreigner could receive.
Wow, so it's not...
And after receiving
from what I understand, this guy received that honor, but also maybe Ford got an honor as well. It's not clear.
Award, Mooney was pushed forward as some sort of diplomat.
But these people liked each other a lot. Let's put it that way. It's very clear these people are super okay with all the things that were happening. Okay.
Trying to feel out the Germans on what their plans were and what it could mean for the United States in terms of trade. No, not war, trade. During these meetings, he met Hitler and reported back to the US president.
Right. So everyone at this point was kind of on equal footing, and Germany was way ahead a lot of technology. They had like jet engines and shit back in the 30s. So they thought they could really beat them with the technical expertise, but they didn't realize that the industrial stuff is what you have to do. Like, they had no defenses against the carpet bombing operations that the U.S. government was able to do. They had no defenses against it, so they didn't calculate that out properly. So that's why they both sides were uppity like that. They were both going to dominate the thing for the same reasons, dominate the planet. And it looks like they came to an agreement later.
became pretty clear what Hitler's actual intentions were, and after a few annexations here and there, an all-out war broke out. The US's initial reaction was something along the lines of, not again, and we really don't want to get into this for a second time.
Right, they had just come off the heels of World War One, and they're like, no more gas and mechanized. Everyone's just sitting in with their feet rotting in a field out somewhere, in a ditch in a field. Like, what are you guys doing?
The attack by the Japanese on Pearl Harbor changed this attitude, and the U.S. officially declared war on Japan in December 1941.
Okay, so they came into it because they set that all up. All right, okay.
Germany a few days later as a reaction to their declaration of war.
So yeah, they were all okay. We're gonna fight now. We're gonna see who's got the better tech, who's got the better production arena, who's got the better ways of doing the propaganda to get people to fight and do crazy stuff they would normally not do if they actually understood what these people are actually doing. These people would actually not be doing it, so they gotta lie to people to make some money. We're making money, hey. Come on,
Although the Nazis and the Americans were at war, business was still as usual. Nazi-American automotive relations remained positive in order to keep the investment secured and the production going. Both GM and Ford appointed several Nazi officials as part of the board of directors of the German plants, and also increased war material production while at the same time resisting to increase war material production back home.
Okay, so, all right. What are they doing there? Kind of beefing them up a little, make it look like a fair fight, right?
And yet, the companies had to give in eventually, when the US government ordered that regular passenger car production would be suspended, and all production capacity would be used to make war material.
Yeah, the Germans didn't quite calculate how much we had over here. They have stories of like the POWs coming to America and then seeing how big America is, and how many people they were, and like that they were build how fast they could put a factory together and have it pumping out material, and how much it's like they had no chance. They got
some 50,000 airplanes, 130,000 engines.
They thought they could do it. No.
17,000 heavy guns and 25,000 light guns were produced in an effort to restore democracy in the world. And the American car companies were glad they could do it. They received millions of dollars in government war contracts, and on top of that, gained national pride and attention for helping so selflessly to win the war. They created what was called the arsenal of democracy.
I mean, you gotta get somehow justify this level of production, right? Gotta have somebody that's worthy of like putting up this level of effort, right?
These were the same companies that also produced what is called the arsenal of fascism. Both Ford and...
Of course.
But these were the same companies that also produced what is called the arsenal of fascism. Both Ford and GM were deeply invested in making Nazi war material, and I'm just going to sum up a few things. General Motors and Exxon, the oil company, worked together to develop a synthetic fuel that was a great alternative for regular fuel, which really helped the Nazi troops on the move in a fuel-starved Germany.
They didn't even gas. The whole diesel thing, Mr. Diesel there, and there in Nazi Germany with that stuff. He was supposed to run off of corn oil, right? Not petroleum. So that's all been nobody knows that, really.
According to some, GM built bombers and jet planes that were regarded as the most important for the Nazi army. Ford used slave laborers, usually prisoners of war, in the German factories.
So Ford used slave laborers, and I'm sure those families didn't get recompense. But it doesn't matter. We're all victims of this shit. So until we all kind of like wise up, like, hey, these guys may not be really actually saying what they haven't given you the full picture.
Arguably the face of it all, and what is also featured in the thumbnail, is the Opel Blitz truck. Although the truck was made well before the war had started, it can be considered as the backbone of the Nazi war machine. All in all, considering the total production output of the American car companies in Nazi Germany, some critics went so far to say that Hitler couldn't have invaded Poland and Russia without Ford and GM, and the war could have been fought without Hitler, but not without Ford and GM. Back in the USA, the American car
it's really hard. It's kind of difficult to hear at first. Like, what do you mean Hitler couldn't have fought without Ford and GM? Wait, I thought we were on the Ford and GM side. Wait, huh?
Companies retained their image as the effortless heroes of the war. The boys overseas were doing great with their Cadillac-powered tanks, Willys Jeep, and airplanes produced by the Dodge factory in Chicago, and could not do it without their wonderful machinery. And yet, something seemed off. Imagine being an American soldier, fighting your way from Normandy far into German territory. You've seen so many abandoned German tanks, jeeps, and guns along the way. You've explored them, and you found that the mechanicals under the hood are oddly similar to what your tank has.
Oddly similar. What the? Huh? Imagine coming over there as a soldier and going, wait a second, what's going on?
You finally reached Rüsselsheim, only to find the factory left in ruins, forced laborers behind barbed wire that don't speak German but praise Hitler anyway, and an assembly line full of unfinished Opels, powered by what seems, once again, familiar technology. You decide to check out the factory's main office, and among the debris and burned documents, you find a letter. That letter has the GM logo all over it. Something doesn't add up. So, to put it very bluntly and oversimplified, the short story regarding the Second World War is this. Germany is bad, the USA is good.
Yeah, there's no other way to look at it. And if you think any other way, you're a conspiracy theorist. Wow, the things you're not allowed to look at and not allowed to talk about, that's probably what's going on.
And the USA won the war thanks to the unlimited help of the American car industry. Along with the soldiers, they are the true heroes of the war. This industry had no involvement in the German side of things whatsoever, as they had to give all their interest and control away to the Nazi suppressors. End of story. But this is a fairy tale.
That was when I first heard that. I was like, oh no, but they gave up their power and everything's like, did they though?
Guide you once again through the timeline of the Second World War and the time thereafter, and look at how the American car companies handled their conflicts of interest. As mentioned earlier in the video, by the mid-1930s, many people didn't think much of what went on in Germany and what that meant for the American car companies. In fact, there were talks where American businesses could help shaping the Third Reich and make some money off of it on the side. This sentiment quickly
why not make a buck? As long as there's money involved,
changed by the start of the 1940s, when Hitler started to show his true color, like annexing countries, rolling into countries uninvited, and his anti-Semitic views. With this in mind, some people started...
He was also somewhat encouraged, and people there kind of... There was more than just Hitler wanted to do it. It was like... The stuff goes back a long ways. It's not just one thing, right? But why did Ford get a Nazi medal? These vets are like, what the hell did I see over there? What the hell is going on, yo?
Connect the dots that this would also influence American companies doing business with the Germans, like GM and Ford. And so every so often, the government, institutions, and journalists would ask difficult questions. And so what was their first reaction? Denial.
Of course! So when you see all this stuff happening today, they're just like, no. When they're super forceful with the no, like, they're like, because he got the explanation card. You're like, no, we would never. How could you ever, like... Dude, if you're really not doing it, just say no. We're not doing it. It's like, here's go look at our stuff. No, but when they go, no, you can't even think that. Like,
As much as you cannot hide the fact that the Führer himself gave you the highest award possible, you can deny any other accusations. And so the American car companies denied any involvement in Germany. Detroit
they denied any involvement. Really? Wow. And they thought that was going to fly. So, when we talk about these corporations and stuff not being what they seem, there's a reason why people think this way, right? We're not conspiracy theorists.
Dearborn had nothing to do with Rüsselsheim and Cologne. When the war finally broke out between the United States and Germany, the criticism regarding the overseas operations of the American car brands grew stronger. But their second reaction softened a bit. Instead of fully denying that they had no influence on German war production, they admitted that they did profit from doing business with the Nazis.
Now you fess up a little. Oh, okay. Now when the heat's on a little. These people.
The all-American way. This was not a matter of war. This was a matter of business.
It's just business. So what if millions died? Business. It's just business. So calm down, everybody. You got stock in that company, right?
Strictly business. Or as Alfred P.
Jesus,
Sloan,
this guy. I'm gonna tell you how it goes. You rang.
president of GM, liked to call it sound business practice, and who doesn't like to make a quick buck.
Sound business practice, my dear sir. These guys. These are the guys that we're Americans, right? This is America. It's for a buck. It's for money. Come on now.
The American car companies took this stance of,
we are in no position to either condone or criticize the way the German government acts. It's not in our interest, nor the right time or place to
you know, that kind of stuff. And they better not
That's a
criticize
nice backpedal, guys. These guys.
the man with the mustache, or they would lose their multi-million-dollar investments. As the war progressed and became more ugly, the US government forbade American car companies to have any contact with their operations on German territory. This once again changed their narrative. Not only did they use this reason to show that they had nothing to do with it, even if they did have something to do with it, General Motors and Ford started to share the message that their hands were simply tied. The Nazis had gained full control over the overseas operations, and they had no influence over it anymore.
Right. That's what you're gonna. That's the story you're gonna go with. Is that what we're going with? Okay.
This is simply a lie. Leaked documents reported that the American stake in overseas operations had decreased and Nazis had gained a controlling interest. But it were the same Nazis that preferred not to gain complete control, arguing that Opel and German Ford were so well managed by the Americans, it would only slow down production if they were kicked out entirely.
Are we connecting the dots yet? No. This is your tax dollars at work. So you're paying money to these governments to pay these people to have high production to create enemy forces to fight Americans for money. Got it.
It was in both parties' best interest if there was still some form of American control. When the war was finally over, the cover-up story changed once again. In a whirl of
some more lies. Oh, okay. Oh, well, but you're really going to come clean this time, right? Everyone?
celebration, relief, and joy that the war was over, the American car companies stepped forward, thumping their chest, priding themselves that they were in fact the true heroes of the war. The boys fighting...
Well, eventually, one side's going to win. So you're kind of always going to be a winner, right? That's pretty neat.
Over there in Europe couldn't have done it without their many tanks, jeeps, and planes. In fact, not only were they the heroes, but also the victims, whose foreign factories all over Europe were blown to pieces during the war.
Even though they tried to tell people not to bomb them. Off limits. Okay.
Of the American car companies. That these same factories produce war material used against those fighting for the good cause, well, that was conveniently forgotten.
Yeah, so these are the people still in charge. These are the folks in charge that where everyone's voting for and places in Congress and yeah, for money. They're gonna make sure you sign up for that draft. So you're enrolled in that fight for these guys. The next thing they throw together. I'm sure there's no more of this going on ever. No, they cleaned all this up now. So the next war will be totally legit.
The US government agreed, as American car companies demanded to be paid millions of dollars so that they could rebuild their factories which they lost during the war.
So you weren't involved. No, but you are, but you want to be paid. But you weren't involved, but you want to be paid for it. Oh. Got it.
Still, when the war ended, there were a few American politicians and journalists that once again started to ask questions about their influence during the war. They were quickly hushed, however, because who is going to nitpick about these details in times of celebration? Let the past be the past. What happened.
So what you got the ding in your family's not the thing? No. Well, that's in the past now. You can let it go. Even though they're suing for damages for factories they had no control over and he had no part of. These people.
And wouldn't it be a rather weird move by the US government to suddenly backstab the auto industry by starting to openly criticize their overseas motives? They were the heroes that brought victory after all. It was once again in both parties' best interest to keep up the good show.
Both parties. Not one. They're not. That's not one party. Oh, both parties. Okay, that's fair because both parties said it was fine, and don't talk about other stuff. And when am I expecting the next payment for my campaign next year, GM? Oh, okay, thank you. Got that check in the mail, and we'll keep that other stuff quiet. Don't talk about it.
And so, the criticism of playing both sides by the American car industry fell silent in the post-war years. We should all forget about the horrors of the war, look forward, and embrace the future. And in many ways, the American car industry certainly embraced the future. From what I could find, it would take another 20 years or so before some agencies started to demand answers on difficult questions again. In 1974, an investigation was carried out by the US Senate Monopoly and Antitrust Subcommittee. A few articles were written about this trail, which also brought some new
Motors, Ford, and Chrysler found themselves involved in serious conflict with interests in national entities due to their concentrated economic power and motor vehicle production, both Allied and Axis territories. The big three inevitably became major factors in the preparations and progress for war. In Germany, for example, General Motors and Ford became an integral part of the Nazi war efforts. GM's plants in Germany built thousands of bombers and jet fighter propulsion systems for the Luftwaffe. At the same time that its American plants produced aircraft engines for the U.S. Air Force. Order of the German Eagle. As the owner of Germany's largest automobile factory, General Motors was quite naturally a more important factor in the Axis war effort than either Ford or Chrysler, whose investments were substantially less. GM's participation in Germany's preparation for war began as early as 1935. That year, its Opel subsidiary cooperated with the Reich in locating a new heavy truck facility at Brandenburg, which the military officials advised would be less vulnerable to enemy air attack. During the succeeding years, GM supplied the Wehrmacht with Opel Blitz trucks, those big truck things, from the Brandenburg complex. These and other contributions to wartime preparations. GM's chief executive for overseas operations in 1938 was awarded the Order of the German Eagle, first class, by Chancellor Adolf Hitler. So his sales guy, the head sales guy, who's giving him all these great tips, got the... Who are these guys working for? All right. Ford was also active in Nazi Germany's pre-war preparations. In 1938, for example, it opened a truck assembly plant in Berlin, whose real purpose, according to the U.S. Army intelligence, was producing troop-style transport vehicles for the Wehrmacht. That year, Ford's executive received the Nazi German Eagle First Class.
Details to the table as mentioned in this video. The investigation was based on federal documents and reports floating around in various archives. As getting information directly from the source, the US car makers...
GM assisted in Nazi Germany's war efforts is false. GM said there's no way. Our German border managers appointed Nazis as super special jailer operators of Saturday 1939. Shit. This whole thing, man, they are lucky that their mind control operations do work so well on the bottom 50% or bottom 60% of people. Like IQ levels under 100, because if they didn't, they'd be done.
Almost impossible. Many representatives were not available for commentary, plenty of reports were suddenly lost, and not to mention that the companies hired armies of lawyers and
but they didn't have anything to do with it. Never heard of it. But they have lawyers. These people. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter. They know it doesn't matter. Most people aren't going to care. Most people don't give a shit. They don't even understand what's going on. Then they'll go into the grinder mill.
That will rewrite the company's history and defend the new narrative. This investigation brought up new revealing and confronting details about the wartime practice. And what was GM's reaction? A 3-sentence denial.
No, we didn't. No. Pay us the millions. And don't look into who we contribute to and ask them questions.
It was the same story all over again. The Nazis took complete control over the Opel factories, and there was no influence from GM whatsoever. GM also accused other companies of doing the exact same thing.
We didn't do it, but everybody else was doing it, but we didn't do it. But you guys were like they're little kids. They're little kids. They're little kids. They know they're doing it. The reason, so they know they're doing it wrong. They know they're doing it dirty because they do this stuff. That means they know they're doing it dirty. If they thought it was awesome and great, they'd be like, no, we're fucking doing this. What are you going to do about it? We own the world. We own you. Fuck you. Pay us. But if they came out and said that, we'd all be like, no. But they basically say that. If you listen to what they're saying, they're like, fuck you, pay me. What are you going to do about it? That's these guys.
And therefore, the charges made by the committee was nothing more than a direct and almost personal attack on GM, according to GM. The last sign of trying to get a clear view of what happened during the war came around the new millennium. A fund, established to compensate those who suffered from the Holocaust, set out to accuse various companies, including banks, oil industries, and the car industry. Think of looted art, unpaid insurance benefits, and the use of forced labor in factories.
If we're going to go back and do that kind of stuff, we're going to go back a long way, and pretty much everyone's going to be paying everybody else.
Both German and American car brands were accused and paid.
Showed up and was able to expose some of this crazy crap.
In the use of forced labor in factories. Both German and American car brands were accused and paid settlements that went to former prisoners.
Settlements. Wow, that means they knew they do it dirty. If they actually had the real lawsuits of all the millions of people that they've killed, people be out of business. We can't have that. Then we wouldn't have nations that would fight against each other then. Well, that would fuck up the economy.
And American car brands were accused and paid settlements that went to former prisoners of war and those that were affected by the Holocaust. One could say that the American car companies finally gave in and revealed some of their secrets.
Oh, I'm sure they gave them all, too. I'm sure they let everybody know everything. That's it. That's all. Limited hangout. Here you go. That's all. There's nothing more. Don't go looking. Don't go looking.
Air of why would you start nagging us again about something that happened so long ago, and as of today nobody's actively involved in anymore.
Delay. Just a delay. By the time it's 20, 30 years goes by, it's like, what do you care about what happened back then? These people.
I want to end this story with zooming out a bit. As a car enthusiast channel, I very much focused on the American car companies during the Second World War, and I usually talk about cars, but this time it's a bit more about the business practices. This video is not a direct
absolute total corruption at the highest levels of the governments on the planet, and expansive, extremely effective mind control operations to make people think they're living in a different reality than what's actually going on, which is basically total abject slavery as long as these guys are in charge. Holy crap. I'll let you go watch the rest. I'll leave it all in the doodly-doo below. I'm Chris. This is Reality Shadow Man.